All right, we can go ahead and get started. Gordon, do you want to kick things off?
I do, Jenna. Thanks very much. And welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. My name is Gordon Robertson. I'm the Director of Park Planning, Design, and Construction for Denver Parks and Recreation. We are going to start the meeting with a formal land acknowledgement. Thank you to Denver City Council and the Denver American Indian Commission for developing this land acknowledgement and for granting permission for Denver Parks and Recreation to use it. Denver Parks and Recreation honors and acknowledges that the land on which we reside is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapahoe peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. We honor elders past, present, and future, and those who have stewarded this land throughout generations. We also recognize that government, academic, and cultural institutions were founded upon and continue to enact exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle ongoing legacies of oppression and inequities and recognize the current and future contributions of Indigenous communities in Denver. As we work on this Skyline Park project, we honor the responsibility to be good stewards of this park space. So with that, we will start the meeting. And we are very excited to be here with you this evening for the Skyline Park Public Workshop #2. Since July last year, when we kicked off this project, Denver Parks and Recreation has been inviting all of Denver to share ideas for reimagining Skyline Park. We have been facilitating a wide-reaching engagement process that invites all of Denver's communities to participate in the concept design. We challenge you to help us continue to dream big about the future of Skyline Park and how it can become an authentic and contemporary expression of Denver's urban outdoor lifestyle. When we met in July for the first Skyline Park webinar, we asked you to tell us about what you love and don't love about the existing Skyline Park. We heard from you about what excites you about other urban public spaces in Denver and throughout the world. And finally, we asked you to tell us more about the types of activities and programs you would like to see in the future Skyline Park. Since July, we have continued to solicit feedback through online and paper surveys. We have conducted additional targeted focus groups to further explore a wide range of program opportunities for Skyline Park. And we have heard you, and our design team has taken the feedback we've received to create a basis of design that has formed the concept options for Skyline Park. The design team has drafted a series of concept options for all 3 blocks, and we are so excited to share with you this evening the best of these options. The goal for tonight's workshop is to hear from you about what you want to experience on each block of Skyline Park. We will take the feedback we hear from you and other stakeholders we've heard from this week and narrow down the design to a preferred concept option, which we will share with you later this spring at our 3rd and likely final public workshop. Downtown parks are the city's front yard where we come together to celebrate our culture and to enjoy our outdoor lifestyle through play and relaxation. This transformation of Skyline Park is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine a significant public space within the heart of our downtown. Skyline Park has amazing potential to serve our community as a public space with a regional draw, but also as a neighborhood park serving our downtown community and surrounding neighborhoods. We want to hear from you and thank you so much for being here. Now let me take a brief moment to thank our project partners without whom this project would not be possible. First off, we'd like to thank and recognize the voters who approved the Elevate Denver bond in 2017, which has made funding for the Skyline Park Improvement Project possible. And we'd also like to thank the Elevate Denver Bond Program, Council District 9, and the Mayor's Office for their leadership in getting us to where we are today. We'd also like to thank Denver Departments of Transportation and Infrastructure, Community Planning and Development, and Arts and Venues who are very much involved in this project. And lastly, we'd like very much to thank the Downtown Denver Partnership and the Denver Theater District for being such great partners on this project with us. My last thing to do tonight before I turn it over is to introduce the project team. I always start with our fearless leader, Happy Haynes, our executive director. She is the leader of this project in many ways. Also, Craig Coronado and Jenna Harris are our project leads in the Planning, Design, and Construction Division of the department. Laura Morales and Jesus Orantia with our community engagement team in Denver Parks and Recreation are key partners on this. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, our design team, Rios. made up of Mark, Nate, and Christina, who you get to know well tonight. They have been fantastic project partners in the design of this project to date. So with that, I will turn it back over to Jenna.
Thank you so much, Gordon. Welcome, and thank you all for being here with us this evening. We have an action-packed agenda and are looking forward to hearing from you about what you'd like to see for the future of Skyline Park. First, we will walk you through the feedback opportunities for this evening. We will show you multiple ways in which you can provide us feedback on this presentation. We will then recap the goals and project context as established through our analysis and input from the first public workshop. We will explore principles that have formed our basis of design and establish the framework for all concept options that we will share with you this evening. We will review the concept options for each block of Skyline Park, learning through polling which of the options you prefer. There will be time for Q&A towards the end of our agenda. Please keep your questions coming to the Q&A box throughout the presentation. Though there won't be time tonight to answer every question live, we will capture all the questions and follow up with an FAQ document following the workshop. We will then review our next steps and touch points in our public engagement process. And finally, the part of the evening that I'm most excited about, we will get to hear directly from you all in a smaller group setting. We will actually distribute the entire webinar into 3 group discussions for your comments on the design concepts. Don't worry, all 3 breakout rooms will cover the exact same content, and there will be opportunity to better understand your hopes for the future of Skyline Park. Thank you again for being here, and I will now hand it over to Christina from Rios.
Evening, everybody. So happy to be here with you all. My name is Christina Ungarenu. I am an urban designer here at Rios, and I'm going to be taking you through ways to provide feedback throughout today's webinar, and then taking you through the goals and context before Nate takes it over with the concept options. So tonight, your camera and audio are automatically disabled for this portion of the workshop. This session is being recorded and it'll be made available later after the webinar. You can interact with us in a couple of ways during the webinar component of this. You can answer open-ended questions. We'll have one more open-ended question later on in the webinar, and you can answer that by using the chat function. And then Jenna will read off a couple of the feedback points that she hears from that open-ended question. You can ask Q&A. And Q&A can also be upvoted. I'll explain that a little bit later. And then we'll also use a couple of polls throughout the webinar. So those will pop up on your screen. So to use the chat box button, just go down to the icon at the bottom of your screen that says chat, and we'll read back some of those responses as I mentioned earlier. To use the Q&A button, again, use the icon that says Q&A. And remember, everybody will be able to see the question that you asked, and you'll be able to upvote other people's questions, and we'll take the ones that float to the top at the end of the session. You can ask questions anonymously. Just remember to tick this box right here if you want to do that. And like I mentioned, you can upvote questions by using this little thumbs up sign. A little bit more explanation about the breakout groups, which I'm really excited about. So we want to hear your thoughts and we want to have an interactive conversation with you. So after we get through the presentation component, Jesus, my colleague here from TPR, is going to put some links in the chat box to 3 different breakout groups. The subject matter is completely the same. The types of conversations we're going to have about the concept options are totally the same, but it's just a way for us to be in smaller groups. So you'll go to the group where the corresponding letters of your last name. So I would end up in group 1, for example, because my last name, or group 3, because my last name is Ungaran, for example. So again, those links are going to be put in the chat near the end of this conversation. And if you are joining us by phone and you really want to be part of those breakout groups, stick around at the end of the webinar, which will be around 6:20 p.m. Mountain Time. And Jesus will help get you situated by phone by reading out the phone number that you need to call to log into the breakout groups. Okay. So before we get into concept options and the juicy stuff, we want to come back to our principles of design and the goals that we set out for ourselves at the beginning of this Skyline Park improvements process. When we began the reimagining process, we chose to build off of the outdoor downtown plan. And we built off of that to arrange for our guiding vision statement and then these goals that you see here. What we do is we continue to use these goals as touchstones as we make decisions about the future of the park. So we'll ask ourselves as we're thinking about a design or discussing a design concept with stakeholders, does this choice serve these goals and in what way? We know that different solutions will amplify different goals differently, but in the end, we want to make sure that we always come back to this vision and this set of goals as our guiding touch points. For the future of Skyline Park to thrive, our focus is people. Who uses the park today? How is the user base going to change over time? And then who else can we attract to the park in the future? From the outdoor downtown plan, we know that Skyline Park currently serves the following spectrum of users: residents, employees, students, visitors. And the map on the right shows the continued growth of office, hospitality, and residential uses in downtown, which is only going to further amplify that dynamic mix of users that are going to come to Skyline Park. We believe that because of its central location in downtown and its tremendous access and proximity to transit infrastructure, that Skyline is uniquely positioned to serve a broader user base as one of the only parks in the central business district. We also believe in the role that Skyline Park can play in fostering a more diverse audience. While we are keenly aware that most of the racial and ethnic diversity that exists in Denver exists outside of downtown, the best aspiration that we can have as a group here today is to make Skyline a place where everyone feels like they belong. It's to make that park an iconic experience that you can't get anywhere else. To come to Skyline Park, this audience needs a there, and they need the access and affordability to be able to get there. Even still, we want to recognize that the diversity of the park is going to fluctuate on a daily, monthly, annual basis, while these farther flung audiences are still going to gravitate towards their local parks for their day-to-day needs. So we talked about people. We also want to think about place. So how does downtown Denver set the stage for Skyline's future? We want to think about Skyline Park in the context of all these other great parks in and near downtown that serve a spectrum of user needs and desires. So from the cultural events and festivals that you get at Civic Center to the wonderful waterfront activities that you're getting at Commons and Confluence, and then to Sunny Lawson and Five Points, which is really the only active ball field in the entire district. So even with this suite of amazing open spaces, Skyline's unique position in the middle of it all, there's still gaps in access. So everything you see here in the orange is an area not within a 5-minute walk to a park. And what we're asking ourselves throughout this design process is, short of physically moving the park somewhere else, how do we break that barrier to that 5-minute walk? What is missing from this tapestry of open spaces in downtown? And we believe that one way to take advantage of Skyline's central location here is to lift up the iconic experiences that are happening there and differentiate it as this iconic heart of downtown. Overall, we think Skyline Park is really well situated to fill these gaps, but it faces three kind of overarching urban design challenges. First, it suffers from its urban renewal past. So it's disconnected from the rest of the city in many ways, that its surrounding context, as well as each block is disconnected from the other. Second, because of its piecemeal evolution, the three blocks are disconnected internally as well. There's numerous internal barriers to movement and challenges to wayfinding. And finally, as we confirmed through workshop 1 and the numerous stakeholder touch points that we had all throughout last year, Skyline is still lacking the amenities and experiences to welcome that broader audience base. So I've gone through the challenges and we want to talk about what we can do about it. So I'm really excited to introduce Nate, who's going to take us through the approach we're taking to address these issues. Thanks, Nate.
Right. Thank you, Christina. Once again, I am Nate Cormier. I'm a landscape architect at Rios, and I'm going to first walk you through what we call the basis of design. This is a summary of 3 fundamental principles for Skyline Park that have emerged from our analysis, from your feedback at the first round of workshops, and from many conversations with project stakeholders in and out of the city over the last 9 months. Then I'll introduce the concept options that build on and offer various ways of fulfilling this basis of design. The first principle is that Skyline Park should be unified. As Christina noted, the park has numerous physical barriers, changes in elevation, and complications from its patchwork history that render it almost invisible as a whole park despite its central location in downtown. We want what we call the urban figure of the park to extend from building face to building face across Arapahoe and all the way from 15th to 18th Streets. We envision a tapestry of lawns and plantings, plazas and pathways that form the continuous fabric of the park. This is also an opportunity to weave rain gardens, the urban forest canopy, and other green infrastructure throughout the park. No matter which particular programmatic destinations that we end up building, these are the elements of continuity that will stitch together the 3 blocks. And implicit in this idea of unifying is also the understanding that the main circulation routes throughout the park should be brought up to a common elevation with surrounding sidewalks to allow universal access and intuitive wayfinding. The second principle is that Skyline Park should be fully connected with surrounding streetscapes and ground floor uses. Its corners should be inviting gateways, its edges should be porous, it should be a mobility hub easily linked to transit and bike facilities, and surrounding buildings should contribute to animating the park. The north edge of the park could be a broad promenade, indicated in green, right, to allow generous access to adjacent buildings while making space for cafe seating and retail displays in support of these kinds of animating ground floor uses. We should also work with adjacent property owners to open up into the park with more engaging lobbies, outdoor workplace amenities, and greater transparency between indoors and out. In green, you can see a number of adjacent building conditions that could be improved to better engage the park. We should also expand the park into adjacent streetscapes, especially Arapahoe, to dramatically improve conditions for pedestrians and cyclists. In green, you can see that we're suggesting that the park extend to include the bike lane on Arapahoe as well as its striped buffer, and that we should extend the park materials to the other side of the street and widen that sidewalk. We've reviewed this approach with Dottie to ensure that it is consistent with long-term transportation goals expressed in the Denver Moves Plan, and we think this is a huge opportunity to better connect Skyline Park and its surroundings. The third principle of the basis of design is that Skyline Park should offer a spectrum of experiences to attract a diverse community. Christina discussed the unique position of Skyline Park in terms of the range of audiences it must serve. Its neighbors, office workers, students, residents in the rest of Denver, as well as convention goers and other out-of-town visitors. As we studied the 3 blocks, it became apparent that each has complementary assets and that we can think of each block as having a different purpose to fulfill so that taken together, there's something for everyone at Skyline Park. Block 1 has traditionally hosted most of the park's large community gatherings. It's next to the 16th Street Mall, and it has few trees and other structures since it was built over a parking structure. We can amplify this gathering role by imagining ways to make it more of a draw with unique art, culture, and special events that would make someone want to visit Skyline Park from around the region. Block 2 has hosted the beer garden and ice rink pop-ups. It also can draw people in off the 16th Street Mall, and it has the most food, beverage, and hospitality uses to animate its edge. If someone's spending time downtown for work, for conference, shopping, or a day out, the vibrant social life on Block 2 should make them want to drop in on Skyline Park. Block 3 has been the least visited block historically, with the addition of a dog park finally bringing some steady use. This is where we can satisfy some of the daily needs of park neighbors, such as residents of the Brooks Tower or the Isbell Lofts. People living downtown don't have their own backyards, so for them, Skyline Park can offer that green getaway. All right, so in the next section, we'll talk about the concept options. We'll reflect on various ways to satisfy this spectrum of desires for Skyline Park. But first, we're going to pause here, and I think Jenna's going to highlight some of the comments we've received so far.
Great. Yes, please feel free to put your comments in the chat. I have a couple already, including one from John. John would argue that the shape of the park, long and narrow, coupled with the weak edges of many of the adjacent buildings, is also a major challenge. Joseph has another comment. To be fair, a good chunk of number 3 didn't seem to be of much use because the city has fenced it off currently. Thanks, Joseph. That's a great point, and one we're hoping to address with the new design. I got another comment from John. He loves the idea of expanding the park into Arapahoe Street and across the street. Thanks, John. We do too. We've got one more from Nicole. She loves the idea of capturing the bike lane into the green space and also expanding the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. Pia has a question. How do you plan to connect 2 and 3 with 17th Street as a major barrier? That's a great point, Pia, and it's come up a lot. I hope that you could actually put that in the Q&A and we could answer that at the end of this presentation.
And we can sketch some ideas with you in the breakout rooms too. We've got some thoughts on that. All right.
All right, I think that's all we've got for now. Thanks, Nate.
All right. So there's a few things we want you to have in the back of your mind as you review these concept options. The first is that the various experiences that are depicted in these plans and precedent images are mostly drawn from the preferences that were expressed in the first round of workshops, both through the quantitative survey data and a careful review of the hundreds of thoughtful comments that the public and stakeholders shared with us. We built the previous surveys on the 5 categories of programming articulated in the Outdoor Downtown Plan, which called for a cultural, social, recreational, sustainable, and connected downtown. And we're going to keep using that framework. So when you see the concept plans, this color key you see in the lower right will give you a sense of which paints in our programmatic paint box we're mixing on each block. A second consideration is that Skyline Park wants to have some spaces which are extremely flexible. For example, a plaza that can become a water feature on one day or a stage the next, as well as spaces that have specific uses that attract particular groups, such as a dog park or a play area. And a final consideration is that Skyline Park should serve different audiences at different times of the day and throughout the week or the year. Some experiences can attract the after work crowd. Others can get people out there in the morning or at lunchtime, and still others will draw people into downtown on the weekend. We can coordinate our programming with conventions and other activities happening around downtown. And seasonally, we want to leverage the existing festivals and events that have taken place at Skyline and hopefully invent new ones to offer more reasons to come back again and again. As you weigh which experiences you want to enjoy there, imagine you're also trying to round out this calendar so there's always something happening at Skyline Park. All right, on to the concepts. So we're going to roll them out block by block, and we'll begin each block with what's been happening there that we can build on. The existing block 1, to get us started, has been instrumental in Skyline Park's role as a successful venue for large community events, such as the Winter Christkindl Market and the Shakespeare Festival. We'll definitely want to retain that flexible event capacity on block 1. These percentages you see on any of the photos, those refer to how well different experiences scored in the workshop 1 surveys and polling, just so you have that as a reference. What has the public been saying about some of these possibilities? So looking to the future, option A expands arts and cultural programming with a performance stage and digital display at the west end of the block that could host music and movies, or even e-games or simulcasts from sporting events and performing arts venues around Denver. At the east end, next to the 16th Street Mall, an arts plaza could host spectacular temporary installations showcasing local and visiting artists. These could have seasonal goals as well, with shade structures in the summer or ice and snow sculpture in the winter. Option B elevates more social opportunities with sculptural shade canopies and gathering spaces ringing a flexible lawn. We could add outdoor work lounges with internet, power, and heat to attract office users. We could also put out winter warming huts to allow gatherings of family, friends, and coworkers to take place throughout the winter. And I think Christina's ready with our first poll. Let us have it. Actually, Laura.
All right, it should have popped up on your screen.
And so if you decide to say a bit of both, we've got 3 great ways for you to give us more nuanced feedback. You'll be able to add your comments here in the chat. You can show up at our breakout rooms and we can sketch and talk and take notes and capture which aspects you preferred. And then we're going to be releasing an online survey so you can review all these materials at your leisure and write out any comments for us that way as well.
Okay, and it's starting to slow down a little bit, so I'll give it 10 more seconds. Okay, get your last votes in. I'm about to end the polling. Okay.
All right, so it looks like the expanded arts and culture is a little bit ahead of the more social spaces, and coming close behind is a bit of both. And so we look forward to your more detailed comments on which aspects you'd like to see included. As we turn now to block 2, the success of recent beer garden and skating rink pop-ups demonstrates that Skyline Park could be a hub of downtown social life. Concept option A features an interactive water plaza and ice rink on its western half below the DNF tower. In the summer, the plaza can draw kids and everyone else to cool off in the water, and we can also turn off those jets to allow summer performances with the tower as a dramatic backdrop. In the winter, the plaza becomes a large skating rink and a canvas for digital and light projections, so the skaters become part of the show. This option also has a food hall on the east half of the block with indoor and outdoor dining areas. We could work with independent local restaurants to host kiosks in the hall, and the structure could be designed with movable walls or a retractable roof to make it comfortable in all seasons. This is another great place for one of those digital displays to enjoy things like game days in the park. It's also important to note that while we are considering concessions, any of the seating or gathering spaces would be available for the general public, not just their paying customers. Concept option B offers a contrasting approach with a linear skating loop and water feature winding throughout block 2. In this scenario, we could still accommodate a smaller rink plaza in the east half of this figure 8 shape for rink sports like broomball and summer performances. This option trades the food hall for a more casual and landscape integrated approach to food and beverage, with picnic lawns and communal tables and fire lounges interspersed with the meanders of the water and skate loop. I think Laura's got a couple more questions for you.
Okay, the second poll popped up.
So this contrasts more of a concentrated plaza rink versus a more dispersed loop with perhaps a smaller rink plaza based in that loop.
All right. Put in your last vote. It's a really close one. Okay, I'm about to close it in a few more seconds. All right.
Oh, wow. You weren't kidding. 33 to 32. The loop is ahead by just by a hair. That'll be fun to talk about. All right. And on to block 3. Oh, sorry. Second question of block 2. So now we're comparing more of a, an architectural food hall in the park versus a more casual approach that disperses it throughout the landscape and potentially could take advantage of some of the back of house facilities in the restaurant space adjacent to the park. But think more beer garden vibe or more food hall vibe.
Okay, maybe just 10 more seconds on this one. All right, I'm about to end polling. Get your last votes in. Here we go. Okay.
All right, so 58% to 32%, the landscape integrated approach is ahead of the food hall. All right, now we're on to block 3. So on block 3, the dog park has been the most actively used feature of late, but we're eager to find more ways to attract downtown residents and families to Skyline. Concept option A brings back that dog park and adds more active uses such as sports courts for basketball or pickleball, fitness areas, and perhaps a running track, a bouldering or climbing feature, and in the winter could host a temporary pop-up sledding hill. The 20th Street Rec Center, only 2 blocks to the east, could also leverage Skyline Park as an outdoor setting for its program. Concept option B offers instead more natural respite from the city with shady hammock groves, nature play, and interpretive nature walks, perhaps in partnership with Denver Botanic Gardens. A greenhouse associated with the gardens could offer a winter hothouse for growing and a warming hut to get out of the cold. Laura's got our block 3 poll coming at you.
Okay, that just launched.
So is this more of your green getaway, or is it the place you want to go for more active recreation and wellness opportunities?
All right, it's slowing down a bit. Get your last votes in. Okay, I'm gonna give it about 5 more seconds.
Laura, I don't see these either. I'm like, each one of these, there's some suspense.
I know, I've got all the power. All right, get your last vote in. We're maybe one or two more missing. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the polling. Sorry if I rushed you. Okay.
All right. The more of the green getaway is ahead slightly, 44% to 40%. And then some bit of both folks that we look forward to hearing more from. All right, so those were our polling questions. Now you can kind of see them all unraveled, unrolled together. And we look forward to getting into even greater detail about these concept options in the breakout rooms and hearing all of your input. And you'll be able to draw from both options and help us figure out what are the right experiences and where do they belong. But you can also weigh in on the overall character, or what we like to call the body language of the park. Should it be more formal with large flexible spaces as in option A, or more informal with more of a variety of spaces and discoveries as in option B? We know you're going to help us find the right balance of these qualities. And with that, thank you so much for listening. And really now it's our chance to hear from you, any questions you have, and then we'll get into some deep dive discussions in the breakout rooms.
Great, thanks, Nate. We have a lot of questions coming in already. So the first one is going to go back to you, Nate. We have a question about the 5280 trail. Will a spur of the high ease of use 5280 trail come down Arapahoe to Skyline Park? Seems as if we should plan for that for sure.
That's our hope and our expectation. What you're seeing here is our goal of bringing the bike lane inboard into the park so that we can expand the width of the park, make the park feel bigger, but also so that we can offer an off-street, really safe and much more comfortable biking experience here. So our understanding is we can get to Cherry Creek Trail and get to the 5280 in both directions. I don't know if they'll formally designate it as a spur. I think someone else will have to weigh in on that. But that is our expectation, is that we're part of that larger network. And to Christina's point about access, if we really want that broader constituency to call Skyline Park, their park, we want to connect to those types of systems so they can get here.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question is going to go to Gordon. Gordon, this question's from Rich. Rich says that he is fully supportive of diversity and inclusion, but how do we prevent a small group from hijacking the park via panhandling, drug dealing, and camping? The park over the years has had issues with a few harassing others and with aggressive panhandling.
It's a great question, and it's always about creating a park that's for everybody. When the park has, doesn't have the attractions that really bring people in of all different from the residents to the visitors to the office workers, including the unhoused, then it feels like only the unhoused are using the park. And that could not always be a comfortable situation for some people. The idea is that we want to really create a park that is for everybody and that is exciting. And when there's a lot of people in the park, that issue typically goes away.
Great, thanks, Gordon. The next question is back from Pia. How do you plan to connect Block 2 and 3 with 17th Street as a major barrier? I'm going to pass that to Nate.
Sure. We are showing fairly high-level diagrammatic plans tonight because we're trying to get your input on what are the experiences you want to have at Skyline Park. But parallel to this, we're having really geeky meetings with the engineers and Dottie and trying to figure out, is that best as a mid-block crossing, or could we elevate 17th Street so the park character crosses over, even while acknowledging 17th Street is a really important transit connection. So, we need that movement through there. How can the park operate as a kind of mobility hub that's related to those transit opportunities? So we are studying some fairly detailed ways to make that crossing more comfortable and safe. But that's, for today, we're just trying to figure out what's the there for you. But rest assured, we'll be getting into a lot more of integration with the streetscapes as the design develops.
Great, thanks, Nate. The next question is going to go to Craig. This question says, how will you do all of this merely on a $2.5 million budget?
Well, good question. We're not going to be able to do that on a $2.5 million budget. We recognize that. Bond budget, $2.5 million, is to address this planning effort and the phase 1 improvements, which once these conceptual plans are refined and the priorities identified, then we'll be able to see exactly what we're spending that $2.5 million on. There's a number of efforts going on to identify and potentially raise additional funds to complete at least one block as part of the first phase. All 3 blocks will be a longer-term effort.
Great, thanks, Craig. The next question is going to go to Nate. Why are you not preserving the Halpern fountain on block 2?
Thank you, Jenna. So at this point, we anticipate there will be an interactive water feature. There will be things like restrooms. There will be some of the things that may exist in the park now in the future. But we're going to have to work with our parks colleagues to figure out if, for example, the water feature, the Halpern water feature, what is its capacity to be reused? What's the cost benefit trade-off of that versus some new features that might be added? And so for today, we're really trying to get from you, what new experiences or ways of treating an experience like a water feature, what would you like to see there? And then we're going to measure how well can those existing assets fulfill your desires versus something else that might be brought there to achieve that. So a decision hasn't been made on Halpern water feature, but that's the process we're taking, is finding out what experiences you want, and then with parks figuring out, can the assets that they have already achieve those or not?
Thank you, Nate. We have a question from Kara. I'm going to direct this question to Christina. So how is the sustainability and every drop effort, and that's a reference to DPR's game plan, being taken into account with the water feature? So how are we thinking about sustainability, resiliency, and preserving our precious water here in Denver?
It's such an important question. As we get deeper into design, and as we start to blend ideas from each of these options and from the stakeholder feedback that we're getting, we're going to be looking at any and all strategies to conserve water on the site, to allow the site to bioinfiltrate, and to make sure that we're hitting those water quality standards that are standard for the Parks Department and for the city of Denver overall. I think what's interesting is one thing we're throwing around is the opportunity to not do a real ice skating rink, but do a glice rink, which it conserves water tremendously and can be used more frequently and more throughout the season because it's not real ice. So that's kind of one quality measure, one water use measure that we're considering. And we'd love to hear your feedback in the breakout rooms about that as well.
I'll just add, in terms of the interactive water feature, we have on our team Fluidity. They are a frequent collaborator, and they're really the world's best water feature designers, and they are absolutely stellar at innovative technology to conserve water. These are recirculating systems, so we're not just throwing potable water down the drain when you use these. And they're really critical to achieving thermal comfort in the city in the summer. We know Denver gets hot, and we know that features like this, when they're well cared for, are a great asset for your public spaces. So we know that it uses some water, it uses some energy, but we're being very resourceful about the amounts we're using and making sure we get a lot of community benefit from those investments.
Thanks, Nate. So this one is more of a question / comment. This one I'll direct back to Nate and maybe Mark as well. Block 3 has struggled no matter what is in it. Neither option creates a vibrant living space that fills it up and makes it safe. Passive design will leave it to fend for itself as it does now. How would you guys respond to that?
Ooh, Mark, you go first.
Well, I think these are very good points that you bring up. And part of what we're trying to do right now in this exercise with all of you is to work through some of the desires and different constituent groups that you guys represent, and how we ideate and bring this together still is in the process. So, you know, I think your comment about Block 3 not being as heavily programmed or as have a density of critical mass is an interesting point, but we were trying to initially balance out the need and the request of from workshop 1 of trying to include a little more passive green space somehow, as well as some of the more recreational aspects into the park. So maybe not quite as successful yet, but we are trying to understand just these kinds of points. So keep them coming from my point of view. We'll keep working on that.
Well said.
Great, thank you. The next question is, sorry, all the questions are coming in so quickly that they're jumping around. It looks like from Blair, we have a great question about what is the plan for the public restrooms in this park design? And I'll pass that to Gordon.
Yes, well, you know, there's a restroom there in the park today in Block 1. Obviously, restrooms would be a critical part of our analysis as part of the facilities that we're going to agree to in the concept plan. So you will see restroom facilities and washing stations. I think we've learned a lot from COVID, and design has evolved as well in that regard. So I think it's a really important part of a successful park, especially a downtown urban park. And I believe you will see that as part of the concept plan coming forward.
Great, thanks, Gordon. Next question, I am going to direct this also to Christina. It's about sustainability again. Jeanette is wondering about the ecological sustainability of having shady respite in a plains climate. While she loves the greenery, how realistic, cost-effective, and water-conscious will the designs be?
I'm going to share this one with Nate, our landscape architect on the team. But I will say that in addition to natural landscape that provides that shady respite, we also have to think about shade devices, shade structures, and how we can bring those into the park in an artful and inventive way. Nate?
You know, it's similar to the conversation about the water feature. Each of these decisions that we make has trade-offs, right? So planting a tree comes with some investment in water and its care and all the other things that go into making a high quality urban public space. What we're trying to do is make sure that we're maximizing the benefit that it has in terms of outdoor thermal comfort, habitat, beauty, just making it the kind of park that's going to make people frankly want to live downtown, play downtown, work downtown, and therefore, you know, start to encourage smart growth and have a lot of cascading benefits for climate, for urbanism. So you can't measure it just at the tree. You know, you really need to think about it holistically about the impact of, and be smart about using the limited resources we have to be as impactful as we can with them. So we definitely will be really water conscious with the plant choices. We do all sorts of drought tolerant landscaping, using natives when we can. We know this habitat in particular doesn't have a lot of native trees to choose from. So, you know, it's a balancing act. But we're also looking at the other side of that equation is how do we get as much utility out of this urban forest canopy that we do think is a critical component to a successful downtown.
Great, thanks, Nate. We're getting a lot of questions about why can't we move more exciting elements to Block 3 in order to create strong draws on the other side of the park. There are questions about moving the beer garden to that side, as well as you know, keeping some of the historic events like Chris Kindle and larger scale events as a draw on Block 3 instead of Block 1.
I think that's exactly the kind of dialogue we want to have with you in the breakout rooms where we can sketch it, take down your notes, and have a discussion about those. I think there's a lot of variations on these. We bring it forward to sort of chart two complementary paths, and I think your ability to articulate parts of things that you would see put together or maybe put in a different place is exactly the type of feedback we want to get from you.
Great. This question is going to go to Gordon. This is from Lindsay. What are some of the ways that you will work with adjacent buildings and businesses in order to create that fluid inside-outside feel?
Well, that's one of the most important questions, and we are already doing it. We're working with the Downtown Denver Partnership hand in hand and with the building owners to start those conversations. I know they've already been underway for a long time, but as a park redevelopment, it's really important that we work hand in hand with the retail opportunities at the park level. And so we will be in discussions with the building owners, and that's an important part of our design.
Great, thanks, Gordon. This question is going to go to Craig. It's from Will. Will asks, has there been discussion of removing curbs from Arapahoe in order for it to feel more like it's part of the park? The curbs on the 16th Street Mall are why the center of the street doesn't feel like it's really part of the mall.
That's a great question, and the short answer is yes. We have been in discussions with DOTI, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, to look at how Arapahoe Street can be modified, as well as the crossing streets 17th and 18th and 15th. But in particular, I agree, the curbs that are there now do separate the park from the street, and that does occur on 16th Street as well. And there are numerous examples around the country of shared streets that eliminate curbs or reduce curbs. There's a lot of utility constraints that we're dealing with in Arapahoe Street, also traffic constraints, the parade of lights. So there's a number of stakeholders that have interests in whether or not and how the street is separated or connected to the park. But the expansion of the park into Arapahoe Street is one of the major items that we're considering here.
Great, thanks, Craig. This question is going to go to Nate, the landscape architect. This question actually came up on an earlier call. The question's from Doug. Doug says the south side on 15th, where new sod has been planted in block 1 to 2 times per year and is watered. Oops, his question just jumped, but the gist of the question is, are we considering artificial turf?
It'll be part of the evaluation of trade-offs for both what are the experiential qualities of it and the long-term maintenance considerations, water use, etc. We've used both on different projects. For Grand Park in downtown Los Angeles also hosts lots and lots of events, and they made the decision that they wanted to stick with real grass, but it does mean that after those types of events, they just make it a part of their maintenance regime that they replace it. And I think we'll have to have that conversation with parks. Is that the approach that we want to go with here versus considering an artificial turf?
Great, thanks, Nate. I think with that, we are out of time for the Q&A. Please do continue to add your questions. We will be capturing all of them and following up to the ones that we weren't able to answer tonight. So thank you so much. There are a lot of really thoughtful questions, and our apologies that we can't answer them all here tonight. So as many of you know, we have been embarking on a wide-reaching and inclusive public engagement process since July, when we kicked off this project with workshop number 1. On the timeline here, you will see we're here at the Pink Box hosting workshop number 2. After gathering the feedback and input from tonight, we will refine the design concepts that we looked at today to a single preferred option, which will be shared with the public later this spring at our 3rd public workshop. Over the summer, we will complete the concept design for all 3 blocks, and then this fall, we will begin the final design for phase 1 implementation. So there are multiple ways, as Nate mentioned, for you to give us additional feedback. Following the workshop, please do take the online survey. In addition, we'd love your help to spread the word about this project by sharing the online survey with your friends and family. The survey will remain live until April 4th. We also recognize that not all members of our community have reliable access to the internet, and we are working very hard to create as inclusive of a public engagement process as possible. For this reason, Jesus from our team is coordinating an effort to distribute and collect paper surveys and to organizations who need them. So please do reach out to Jesus if you need help with paper survey distribution, printing, pickup. As always, please watch for updates on our website, denvergov.org/theoutdoordowntown. We hope to see you all at the 3rd public workshop later this spring. Thank you again for your continued support and enthusiasm for the Skyline Park project. And please do stay with us because Christina is about to explain how we are going to enter the breakout rooms for further discussion.